thank you all for showing up. Very nice turnout. It's great. And I think what we'll do is jump into this right now. We have several special speakers, if you will. And the first one's going to be Lieutenant David Maggio. And he's been in law enforcement for 25 some years, 18 years here in Taos. And he's going to give a small presentation, a short one, and you can ask questions afterwards.
Thank you for inviting me. As I said, I'm with the Taos Police Department, been with the town for 18 years. I'm basically the chief, second in command. Been in law enforcement for almost 25. Worked on the gang unit in California for a while, so did a little bit of everything. And I want to thank my lovely wife, Ana Martinez, who I drug out here on a Sunday to come with me. She's our county clerk. So I guess they asked me to come speak about what you can do for security, burglaries, what to look for. My detective, Barry Holfelder, is back there, who's our intelligence guy, who probably knows more than me. He's the one that gathers all the intelligence and then feeds it back to me and the chief. So what I understand, you have a good email blast that goes out. Excellent, excellent idea, good thing. That gives you a lot of good intel, and my detective gets it. So that's a good thing. And I understand you have a neighborhood watch. I understand. That's good. Make sure you're the neighbor that's watching your house is a good neighbor. Not to say that you're not all, but anytime you have a neighborhood watch, you want the neighbor watching your house that you can trust. So that's a good thing for burglaries and theft, to cut down theft. I'm going to talk a little bit about some things you can do to help make it look like your home, so you don't have the uninvited guests when you're not gone, when you're gone. And I'm going to talk about the Neighborhood Watch program a little bit, just real briefly. So one of the things is that that I see in the book that all you guys have each other's phone numbers, which is good. So the best thing always, if you're going to go out of town for a while, notify the post office or have your neighbor pick up your mail so it ain't accumulating in the mailbox. Or if someone's staking out and surveying your house, at least it shows somebody's picking up mail. The other thing is let your neighbor know also where you're going to be, how long you're going to be, and have your neighbor go over every so often. If you have an extra car there, if you trust your neighbor, move your car in and out of the parking lot, or position your car different. Have your neighbor go in there, switch things around the yard, your hoses if it's in the summertime, just to show that looks like someone's using or watering your house, looks like someone's home. You want lights, timer lights to come on and off, different times, different places in your house, so it looks like your lights are coming in and off different in your room, so if someone's going by, it ain't just one light that's coming on all the time, because they know that. Your motion lights, you know, we're more than happy to come out and go through and give you security ideas a little more detailed. We try not to put them out in public because we don't want the bad guys to get them. We want the people to know, the ones that should know, and not the people that shouldn't know. So you're more than welcome to give us a call at the Taos Police Department at any time at 758-4656. That's the our administrative secretary, and she can get in touch with me or the chief. Other things is keep up what you're doing. If you see suspicious activity, call our non-emergency number, 758-2217 dispatch. Anything that looks out of place, doesn't feel right there, suspicious cars, circling the neighborhood, people coming to your door, knocking. We do get people to do that, to feel you out. You know, never let anybody in your house that you don't know. If someone needs to use the phone, anything like that, bring the phone out to them. So don't let them get a good view in your house. Make sure if you have a security system, that your security system's set, and make sure our dispatch, you have an alarm permit, so we have a key holder in case we do have to respond out there. Because what happens if we don't have a key holder out there and we have to come out and you have a broken window, we can't get a holding way to come up and secure your residence, and we can't stay there all day. So then you have a door broken or a window broken. So make sure you have a few good people that you can trust that will come and respond to your house if there's a problem, or that can let us in and search your house just to make sure. Because I've seen it back where criminals will set the alarm off, wait for the police to come, and then, okay, oh cool, they're good. Then they break in because then the police think, oh, it's just going off again. So, you know, have someone that, if you want, that will trust, that you give you the passcode, that we can come in and and do a protective sweep in your house to make sure there's nobody in there. You know, and personal security, whether it's the house or at a residence, if you're coming out of a grocery store, you know, I tell people we teach personal security. You know, before you rush out into the parking lot, I know we're all in a hurry, you want to get to a car when I go, stop, take a breath, scan the parking lot, scan what's out there before you go to your car. You know, see what's by your car, see who's standing out there. The last thing you want to do is get out to your car and you're parked in a dark spot and something happens. So take that moment, take a second, just scan. Get to your car, just scan inside the car real quick. It only takes a few seconds. You know, we're more than happy to go over more detailed stuff. I don't want to take up all your time. Same with the residents. You know, like I said, the lights. Alternate your lights. Have somebody come by, check your house, pull your mail, move stuff around your yard. Post signs. Even if you have a dog, beware of dog. It's a good opportunity. Just people don't like to deal with dogs. Lights. Your security lights, but don't have the security one light just in one spot that comes on all the time in the front. You want them altered around your house because crooks know different ways to get in. Any questions?
I'd like to hear your comments for those of us who are armed. Any ideas?
I'm an advocate of concealed carry. I tell my friends because it's so easy to get one, but you've been to the course, I take it. You know, if you have to use it, that's what it's for. I hope that I never have to use my gun, and I've never had to use it all these years. I mean, never had to pull the trigger. So, and if you're going to have a firearm in the house, it's a good idea to consult what kind of firearm you want in your house for protection, and then you got to really look deep down in yourself. Can I pull that trigger if I have to? Because if you can't pull that trigger, then a gun is no place for you because you're just going to have that taken away and used it against you. And then if you use it, you got to live with that the rest of your life. So that's all I can say about gun carry. But I'm an advocate of concealed gun carry. Anybody else?
Are skylights an issue for break-ins? Like I know some homes have Viga ladders.
It can. It all depends if they can get on your roof, access to your roof. You know, that's why I don't suggest leaving ladders out, laying out by your roof. Depending on how big the skylight. If you do have a skylight, make sure you have security contact with it or a motion detector just right below it. So if they do enter into this roof, because they'll find a way to get in. You know, nothing's 100% safe. What you do is try to make it harder for them or make them move on to somewhere else because your house is just too hard or not very comfortable for them to break in. Like I tell my friend who's the sheriff, I said, we try to send all the crime to the county, so keep them out of my city. Anyone else?
Do gates deter crime?
Somewhat does. Some are too lazy to get over, some just can't make it over. It depends how high the gate. And then if you're going to have a gate, you know, make sure you lock it so they just don't reach over and open it up. You know, anything that makes them more work and have to do extra work, they might decide this house next to me is easier than your house. So if your house is more difficult, they're going to move on to a more easier place. Right? If your house is lit up where they can be seen, the neighbor across seeing someone walking around, you know, they don't want to be seen. Camera systems, I recommend camera systems. They're irrelevant, cheap. They're not that expensive. They help us when we have to prosecute a crime. There's nothing like a video. When you show them, what can they really say? So, but we're more than happy, one of us or our detectives come out, show you where to place a camera, because it does do good if it's straight shoot down on your head. You want cameras where we can see a face shot. I don't know if any of you follow Facebook, our Taos Police Department Facebook. Every so often we'll post a picture if we can't identify somebody, and we'll usually get a hit. Somebody will say, oh, I know him, and then we go pay a visit to them. So it's a good tool. And just an early note, our burglaries, our property crimes are down right now, which is a good thing. And the Sheriff's Department's been really working hard to put people in jail, and our department and the state police. So our property crimes are down right now, and we haven't had any recently that I know of. And I just talked to my detective in the Weimar area. You guys are doing a great job with the meal blast and the information he's gathering. It's good intelligence. Even if you don't think, we might have something that we could use So keep up with the good work. I would recommend never confront anybody. That's what our job is, because I don't want anybody getting hurt. You know what I mean? So let us do the job. Call us, and if you really think it's an emergency, then call 911. But keep up the good work. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
What is the profile of the typical house burglar?
There's no role particular. I've seen them from very young to, depending on if they're gang members and they're out there to get initiated in a gang, to the very old because they have a bad drug problem. Most property crimes are because of drug problems. They got to support their habit, and it's easier to burglarize than go rob a place where you're facing getting shot or something.
What are the burglars targeting? Electronics, or is there any sort of?
And that's, it all depends what they usually want stuff that they can move fast and quick. Cash is always good for them. Electronics is good for them. Art, depending on art, you got to find some place that's you're going to fence it and you're going to get your money. It's hard. But I've seen them take weird stuff to all kinds of stuff. So it's just whatever they can grab, and they feel that they think they can get a buck for it. We're good?
Thank you.
Thank you guys very much.
Okay, great. Well, our next guest speaker is actually a resident of the Weimar area. He's become somewhat famous here in this last year in the newspaper, etc. But we're so happy to have Andrew. He put the windows in my house, so he's a good guy. Andrew Gonzalez, and he's going to speak issues. Well, you'll find out shortly, and can ask him many questions. Andrew Gonzalez.
Thanks, Dr. K. I really appreciate it, and thanks to our lieutenant as well, who's here with the Town of Taos Police Department. For many of you that don't know me, I'm a city councilor with the Town of Taos, and most recently, as Dr. Knudsen mentioned, that I am famous because I also started as public relations manager for Kit Carson Electric Co. So I wear two different hats, and that's one of the reasons I'm here today, is to address two separate issues. One, the fiber to home project that we're rolling out in the Weimar area, and then I'm sure you have a ton of questions with regards to the water infrastructure that's proposed to go into the Weimar area. So I think we're probably better off in starting with the harder topic first, which is going to be the water infrastructure, and I guess I'd like to get a feel for what some of your questions are first. I'll give you just a little bit of background history. The water infrastructure project was done in cooperation with the New Mexico Environment Department. The Town of Taos, this was pre my days as a city councilor, commissioned a study with regards to the type of bacteria that was found in groundwater, specifically potable drinking well water. When the study was commissioned, it found that the Weimar Foothills area, Maestas, Talpa, that area where there was a high concentration of septic systems, and it was a pretty good mix of individuals that either didn't have the means to consistently empty out a septic system, or just people that neglected it. So we were finding traces of bacteria in well systems. So that was one of the biggest reasons for it. The water came along kind of as a package, where it was a water sewer deal, because if you're doing one, you might as well do the other at the same time. So that was one of the reasons we did it. I'll give you a little bit of history as far as where I came into the picture as a city councilor, was that I had major concerns, especially living in the Weimar area. How was that project going to be financed? And while the city was going to lay the infrastructure, it still left the burden upon the residents to connect to the system. So for me, it was saying, well, either we need a financing mechanism in place that helps those residents pay for those hookups over time, and what does that financing mechanism look like? Or are we going to, basically roll out a phase where it's done in phases and each resident becomes apportioned for whatever that hookup fee is. Now, keep in mind that depending on the distance from your home to where the tap is, it could run upwards of $6,000 to $7,000 for a water connection system, and that's a big hit, especially for individuals that are living on fixed incomes. So the city hasn't pursued it much further than that, really because of the fact that we don't have that financing mechanism in place. We don't know what that solution is. But I would, venture to say that, from a city council standpoint, and with regards to what water is like, I would like to see the sewer at least come online first. Even if they run the water lines, city becomes responsible for the water lines, but at least having the sewer hookups come into play first. It's not to say that we are in no way, shape, or form have we ever discussed putting cap limits or asking you to cap your wells, even if you do connect to the city's water infrastructure. It would be at that point that we would ask the state engineer to remove the language that it's used for domestic use to more an agricultural use. But we wouldn't meter it, and we're not asking for you to cap it. So I guess from there, questions? Go ahead.
You're talking about contamination of a well, the septic system. How does a very deep well and work with that? If you have a septic system and a deep well, for instance, my well's like 400 foot deep.
Well,
What's the
definition of depth are two different things that we've seen from the state engineer's office, and we've seen contamination wells are upwards of 800 feet, whereas the city's deep water well systems sit about 3,000 feet, 3 to 3,500 feet. And really what that is that the more water pack we get on top of just regular everyday usage of the septic seeping, the more likelihood that water will continue to downflow. We have some pretty cool graphs that the state engineer's office supplied us with a few years back that kind of show the order of where contamination starts and at what point the environment does its best to filter it out. Now, there's really no chance that it would hit down to the 300 to 3,500 foot level, but even in that case, that's when the city's deep water well systems, we still treat our water even at that depth, just because there are traces of arsenic, just because of the area that we live in. But as far, 400 feet, you'd think it's a pretty decent depth, but in all actuality, we've seen contamination at 800.
along those lines? I live in a section of foothills where all the lots around me, I'm 5 acres, everyone else is 5 acres. Is that any protection, that buffer?
No, because what it does is, the way the water infiltration system works, you're probably all sharing the same well. Or if not sharing it, you're pretty darn close to it. So even though you're on a 5-acre partial where you've tapped, maybe tapping off your neighbor's well, and that's one of the reasons we kind of look around when we go into a water shortage or a water scarcity, and we ask people to start really reducing their use. It's because the ecosystem hasn't had a chance to naturally replenish because of drought. So really what it is that if you and let's say 20 residents are sharing the same well system, the likelihood of really becoming more conscious about how you water is really comes into effect, because that's when you start seeing sediment within your well.
I don't know if we'll labor a point, but I'm a little confused on common well. Everybody in my subdivision has their own well. They're all on-
Well, so if you take of what an aquifer looks like, you're probably tapped into the same aquifer.
Okay, now I know, I guess. Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, right behind you. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, one of the things when we moved here, we are already on city water and sewer, and one of the things that kind of surprised me was that the sewer is metered based on your water usage every single month.
Mm-hmm.
Other places that I've been, it's metered based on a low usage month, like say February, because in the summer, you're probably watering gardens and things like that. If you water your garden, your sewer bill becomes outrageous in this town.
And that's something
What,
that
is that something you're planning?
that's
to
something
look
the
at?
city needs to address.
I've said something to the utility people for a year now.
Yeah.
And everybody goes, yeah, it's terrible. And nobody does diddly.
And that really has to come. It has to come from a policy standpoint. It has to come from.
Should we get picket signs and walk up and down and try to see all of what?
I don't think because I think every city councilor, including the mayor, is aware of the pain that it takes. Anytime you water your lawn, that's when my sewer bills just skyrocket, because they're anticipating that the more water you use, it's going to end up down the drains, when in actuality you're watering a garden.
Right.
The problem that we have with that, when it was instituted, they were trying to get it where the system, as far as the sewer and the water, were maintained out of those funds and fees. So they looked at it and saying, well, the more water you're using, obviously it's going down into the sewer system. That was, I don't quote me on the date, but I know it was well pre-me, as far as, probably, I must have been a kid when that was instituted, but it was during a time when there was still a lot of agricultural use, acequia wise, where there wasn't the concern that people were using, drinking water to water their gardens. But as Taos has grown and grown considerably, especially right around the 2000 era, when we had that real large population boost, the city started to look harder at how they recapture and keep the system whole. I don't think that was the right way to do it. Still don't feel it's the right way to do it, but it's going to take a policy decision upon the council to figure out how the formulation works. What we charge, do we go to a flat rate for sewer and a metered rate for water? But then at that same point, what happens to the individuals that are on well water that are still dumping water into the sewer? How does that become metered? So it was kind of done as a blended mesh, so that it kind of washed out in the end. But in all actuality, the people that pay for it are the individuals that are on city water.
You're asking for help down at City Hall? You'd like us to
We
come down
could
and
use the
counsel?
help. We could use the help, and we can use the help from the state engineer's office, because they're the ones that would have to commission the study as to the best way to run with it.
So it would cost to put in a second meter?
Second meter, it would be upon you, and I know our hurricane meters right now, which is the new smart meter that the city has gone to, runs about $500.
But you'd also have to put in another line for you.
Yeah, you'd have to wire it, tie.
So, I've seen surveyor markers through Weinberg. My understanding was that was for water only, not sewer. Is that correct? Is there no plans for sewers in the immediate future?
No, there is plans for both. So the $25 million that's been allocated to take care of the foothills area is for water and sewer infrastructure. So Sauter Miller and Associates is the engineering firm that's been hired out of that $25 million allocation to do the engineering and design work. And really what it is it's, as you know, sewer is a gravity-fed system, and we need to figure out the best way to make that work.
And if it comes down your street, are the residents obligated to hook up, or is that an optional?
The sewer, I want to say that the city will probably take a proactive stance to make that mandatory, just because of the groundwater issues. Water, it's probably at this point going to still be an option.
Is that also true if you're not in the city limits, you're only in the county?
Well, I'd have to look at the territorial zone maps, because we have the ETZ, the extraterritorial zone, which is the annexed zone, and whether or not you fall within those boundaries. If not, you'd be under county stipulation, whatever their laws are.
What kind of time frame do you anticipate for all this stuff?
Probably within the next 5 years. We still have some time. They wouldn't move. The engineering and design is going to take about 2 years in and of itself, and I know that they've been working on it pretty actively. I see Sauter Miller up there quite a bit. But by the time they get that information back, it still has to come back to planning and zoning, and then from planning and zoning, it still has to come back to the city council for approval. Because based on design estimates, we may be way off, the $25 million that's been allocated to this.
So you're saying they're doing both water and sewer, but are they gonna actually put the lines in at the same time in the same trench?
Main lines would be dropped, so you're looking at an 8-inch sewer line, and then probably
With the water
a 6-inch
line.
water line.
So they only do it once?
You only do it once. Yeah, you open the trench once. Go ahead, sir.
I just have a question. In the annex area where you're on county land and not in the town of Taos, does the Taos Police Department respond to that, or the sheriff, or both?
If you are legally annexed, yes. The town of Taos, well, the county has the overlay of the entire county boundary. So if there was a shortage within the police department that they couldn't respond for some reason, they were out at an accident or dealing with another issue, the county has the obligation to still service the area. And I'd like, you could probably ask Lieutenant Maggio, who would know a little bit better how their interagencies work, but I know they have a great working relationship.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
This may be jumping the gun a little bit. Anyway, and the sewer lines, talking about this with other people in the past, one of the things that came up was that, yes, if a sewer line is there, you're going to be responsible for deactivating and filling in your septic system. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, number two, if a sewer line is put in above where your home is, and I understand there's about a 300-foot line. If that means pumping up to the sewer line. In fact, I talked to a plumber, mine is lower, and I said, how many pumping stations? He said 2. I said, how long before those fail and the sewer rushes up from the sewer line into my house? And he kind of laughed and he said, everything mechanical does fail.
And, that's a good point, because the issue that we have, and again, that's part of the addressing of the engineering and design with Sauter Miller, is we fully understand. The subdivision I used to live in, where Dennis lives now, because Dennis purchased the home I used to be in, sits actually below grade. So that sewer has to get pumped up. There is a sump pump on the property. In the 3 years I lived there, I never really had an issue with it, but I don't think 3 years is really enough time to give it to full. I don't think 10 years is probably enough time to give it to really find out what your implications will be. But because the subdivision had already been built that way, and it was within the city boundary that really sits behind the living center, that you were obligated to hook into city water and sewer within that subdivision. So we didn't have a choice. So the sump pump, it was about a $10,000 additional expense for the sump pump. But I didn't go cheap either, because it was my home. I didn't want anything flooding back into the house. So I think a lot of it, those are logistical challenges that I think the city needs to really focus on. That if there are those properties that sit below, it may take that, those lines get buried below that depth, so it is a true gravity fed. We're not pumping anything uphill to drag it downhill. That's part of the issue that I had, with addressing a lot of these concerns, was saying, well, how do we, we may address the financing, which, let's say it adds $15 a month to your bill over the course of 5 years until, the hookup's paid up for. But how do we address the individuals that are going to take 2 lift stations? How do we address the issue, the additional issues that if those lift stations fail, even though they've already been financed and paid for, who fixes that? So those are all logistical issues and that's why I say 5 years as far as timeline, because I think that at the very least that's what it's going to take to get all the issues ironed out. I mean, this isn't something that, I definitely didn't want to jump both feet in the water, go in the fire with first, to say, no, it's coming through, and, that's just the way it's going to be. Anytime the city takes on an infrastructure initiative like this, I mean, this is huge infrastructure dollars for us. I mean, you're talking a city that runs a budget of $55 million a year, and you're taking $25 million in one shot, and granted, a lot of it is grant money through the NMED, but still, it doesn't help when the residents, and me being a resident, and in the subdivision I live in now, there is water and sewer, so it's not an issue for me. But I mean, y'all are still my neighbors, so I still have to be cognizant of how we address those issues. Yes.
Well, so that brings up his question about pumping. Say we live on Santa Cruz and our house is actually like below where the line is going to be. Couldn't we be hooked up to the sewer on the street below us so it can be gravity fed? Are they addressing those? Because we have 6-foot easements.
I think that would be entirely up to you, but it's going to depend whether you're crossing somebody else's property line.
Well, I thought we had easements on all the property lines for
Well,
that.
there is basically a utility easement, but it depends on what infrastructure already lies within there. So, for example, Kit Carson Electric already has electric buried in there, and your line's going to need to go. Our electric typically sits at about 36 inches for depth. Let's say your line, because of gravity, needs to be at 6 feet. I think the utility company's going to throw a fit because of the fact that we really don't want anybody disturbing down below what has a chance to fail on the electric system as well. Probably wouldn't be a good idea at the same point, for you if you're fed off that line. So again, I think a lot of it's going to come. Typically, the way we'd like to run water and sewer is right down the middle of the road, because it's the easiest of access for our public works department to get to without having to get permission from you to be on the property, or for you have to dedicate another easement for them to be out there, because it is a manhole.
Will we be able to talk to them before they get construction finished?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So,
Is there a
I mean,
contact person?
in anything like this, there will be a public comment period.
Well, I mean,
to-
about our specific lot, could we talk to the engineers?
What I would do is, if you see the engineers in your area, I know they're on Weimer, Maestas, Baringhouse. I've seen them on Calle del Oso, and I've seen them on your road, Doc, right? Hennings. Have they been up there?
No.
No. So when you start seeing them come out, like I said, they're right now within this last year, they're mapping from the main line, which starts right about where the detox center is, and runs up. And then what they do is it basically works like an octopus tentacles, where you start to branch out and really see what's the best way to tap that line. So if you see them, that would be the best time. If not, call French Espinosa, who is our public works director, and maybe get some feedback from him. Now, he's not going to have anything to do with it, because French is going to be more along the lines of maintaining the system. Solder is going to be the guy that's going to really say what it's going to take, 2 lift stations, 1 lift station, or whether or not you can access it from another.
Yeah, that's just what I'd like to know, so it sounds like very expensive with the lift station.
Yeah.
You know if the design for the water will include fire protection, fire protection?
And yes, because one of the biggest, once we got the $25 million grant, our fire department immediately put in, within their fire safety, I can't remember what the terminology or the name on it is, but it drops our fire rating. So what it does is it also drops your homeowner's insurance. And the closer you are to fire suppression, the less likely there's a chance that something major catastrophic would happen to your house. So they've already put in for that. I know we got some bonus points already added into the city's overall calculation, and it dropped us from a level 3 to like a level 2. We're slowly inching down because almost everywhere within the city now has access to hydrant. So yes, it will. Okay. Yes.
The water line markers are already on Santa Cruz, and they look like they're picking driveways as a place to put the hookup, even though it's just going to be a tap point. I'm on a well share, and our line goes down between our properties to our well, and that would be the most logical place to go on either side to tap into the. Who do we talk to rearrange that they don't put the taps?
So that would be Solder Miller, the individuals that are out doing it. So what we'll do is the city, probably within the next 12 to 18 months, we'll start to see preliminary maps of what they're proposing and how they're proposing, because we still need to send this off to the New Mexico Environment Department. They need to give us their blessing that says, what they've designed, what they've drawn out is sufficient for the system, or that they're not over compensating for the system. So right now it's going to be, kind of in the design phase. I'm sure those markers and maps that they're taking back are laid out just the way we do our fiber here, which are laid out onto a Google map, and then from there they run all their infrastructure lines. I don't know how far along they are in the process, but I can definitely find out.
Well, then, if we're going to be including sewer lines in there anyway, then it's not very realistic that they're going to be putting in those lines soon, no?
No, they wouldn't. Like I said, it would have to go, I think it's going to take probably anywhere between 2 and 3 public forums before the Planning and Zoning Commission, and then it'll come to council for final approval before they put anything in the ground.
So it could be a year.
It could be
More than a year.
I would say it's probably more than a year. I know on our end, the design phase was going to take about 2 years,
Oh, okay.
and then construction probably another 2 to 3 years after that.
Oh, because French said that they were going to be starting the excavation like.
They shouldn't be starting anything.
Okay,
Yeah,
well,
not-
that's good. That makes sense.
Not
And there's
without,
always-
because the easement still has to be addressed. I think some of those properties that they're working in and around are still part of the annexation, which haven't been zoned. There's still some logistical issues that have to be done prior to that happening. Yes?
By bringing water or sewage onto vacant land, does it change my tax rate?
I don't know that it would necessarily change your tax rate. It would probably change your land value, because it's got the access to city water, city sewer. Now, does that vacant piece of land already have a well on it?
No.
No. So I would say it's probably going to be more within the auspice of changing your land value, which ultimately at the end of the day will affect tax rate. Is Anna still here?
Yeah.
Hi, Anna.
Remember, I'm the clerk.
But you have you worked inside? I mean, have you heard of that? As far, because the city doesn't deal with property taxes.
Right.
City
Yeah,
deals
it
with.
would go to the assessor would value that higher.
Yeah. So I mean, I wish we could tax property because we'd be in a lot better shape. Yes, sir.
Where does the septic system fit in this plan?
So the septic system, again, would be something that Dr. Knudsen addressed, which would be an actual removal of the septic system. So backfill, you pull out the tank and basically backfill the area where it once sat. The other option, I believe, is to empty and cap with concrete. Those are the two options really available.
Well, with that system, at least we knew what was going to be deposited, what becomes of that deposit after that.
Yeah. So, well, and that's part of the problem that we have is, I mean, as you know, leach lines branch out on a property. From your neighbor upstream, you may be the benefactor of their leach lines. So that's why we're saying, you know, the entire system would have to be pretty much dug up and backfilled. Yes?
Is there a new proposed treatment facility?
Our wastewater treatment facility that exists currently is actually built out to hold about another 175,000 residents. It's well overbuilt for what we should. So our wastewater treatment facility was implemented. They did an upgrade about 2006 that was in the neighborhood of about $35 million, which really brought it up to par. And really what it did was that because the city started to receive septic waste from the county, which we never did before, and even if we did with some concern and strain. Now we have the ability to receive from the entire county so that all waste is coming to one facility. It's not going to multiple. Yes?
Just a simple question. This talk has been going on for some time, and there are always costs that are mentioned. And somebody asked me, or I was also thinking, if there's a cost to do something at my house, how do you pay it? Well, how is the cost taken care of?
So that's part of that financing mechanism that, you know, was explained, where, you know, and again, all the logistics of that have not been ironed out as to how New Mexico Finance Authority would allow the city to finance an individual's hookups and get paid for over time. And yeah, over time. And really what it is the concerns that, you know, lie within the city itself is that if a property were to fall into foreclosure, if a property would become abandoned for whatever reason, and just basically nobody's there to foot the bill, then how does that get taken care of? You know, then we start bordering on grounds of anti-donation, and, you know, does it just continue to accrue like a payment and interest? Is it lien to the next property owner? And what does that do to the burden of the system for everybody else that still, you know, lies within the system? So it would be financed.
For a homeowner who would be hooking up to the sewer system, besides hooking up, would the homeowner also have to bear the cost of sealing that septic system and filling it in?
Yeah, yes. Go ahead, sir.
Are you saying now that any septic pumper in the county now is supposed to be disposing of their waste at the town wastewater treatment? I mean, when we first moved up here years ago, I thought there was a septic sludge pit at the dump, but it sounds like everybody should be running it through the wastewater treatment.
So there's one other individual that owns a septic facility here in Taos that has his own, basically, wastewater treatment plant. The ultimate goal of the city, and we just went through this about 6 or 7 months ago, as to establishing times of delivery rates for septic haulers, because the problem that we had was I don't want anybody dumping waste into an arroyo. That's my biggest concern. So one, I needed to make it accessible, I needed to make it affordable, and I need to make it, you know, within times that, you know, if you have an emergency Christmas Eve, that we still give them access to our facility to dump. The individual that owns his own septic system is the one that had the loudest gripe about allowing septic haulers to be in and out of, you know, of our waste treatment facility unattended. And really what we've done is we've put steps in place, so badge entry, video cameras, so we know who's in and out. And each time a septic hauler is in there, it logs who was in there last. Only the owner has the key card So the owner is really the one that ends up responsible, that if something ends up within the wastewater treatment plant that shouldn't be in there, the burden and liability falls on him. But ultimately what it is, we'd like everybody to start using our waste treatment facility, because then it's controlled, it's monitored. And really what it is from us as a standpoint is saying that if this goes back to the policing side of it, is if there's a meth house, then it's trackable, it's traceable, because we need them now to start logging each and every resident and drop no more than 5 loads at one time, so that we know exactly time frame, roughly where it came in, and what it does to shock the system. If we haven't had any instances of that, but moving forward in the future, those are our concerns. And that's where we're kind of lying within that area, is if people aren't emptying out their septics and they're dumping those chemicals into the septic, it's not just the issues of E. coli and everything else that comes with solid human waste. It's the inorganic stuff that comes out of meth and anything else that they dump in there. Those are our concerns. Yes, sir.
How deep will the sewer lines be in the road?
That's going to depend on grade. Typical right now is roughly about 4.5, 5 feet. But again, if we're addressing issues of grade, then I'd like to see them sit below the property lines so that everything is gravity with no issues. But some of that could get cost prohibitive too. Anybody else? Okay, on to the fun stuff. So fiber optic rollout. I'm sure you've seen a lot of work in and around the Foothill neighborhood area with trenching and whatnot. And then the one thing we do ask is if we've had a contractor that's been in your yard, within your driveway or wherever they've ran our lines, where they've ran conduit, if you have issues, please let us know here at the co-op so that we can address it. You only have really till June 31st, because after that point, grant money runs out, and if you didn't file a claim within that period, we're not going to have the funds, or the funds are going to come out of rate base to pay for any of the fixing of the roads. So I just want to put that out there first and foremost, because as that grant period starts to come closer, inch closer, and we get to the C's of the funds being expired, we really need to have all that stuff on the books. Now, it may not get fixed by June 31st, but at least it's noted, we have it documented, that there is an issue and we can get it fixed up as soon as possible. Yes, sir.
Along those lines, when we had the fiber optic trenching done on our road, they put it right down in a road that the residents around us paid for. We're in the county. We paid for that. And instead of putting it in the sagebrush along the road. And I complained to Kit Carson. Kit Carson got on the contractor. The contractor came out there and shuffled a lot of dirt around. Okay? And we really couldn't tell that it wasn't an adequate job until this, among this one season.
The rains, yeah.
We've never had, since I've been living in the subdivision, after we had the road fixed for over 20 years, we never had the drainage problems and the mud problems, because, as you know, you dig the trench, all the good stuff you put on top of the road bed is on underneath the trench dirt.
Mhm.
And so it looked good at the time, but with this past winter and this tremendous flood we've had, it isn't. Can we complain again?
Yes. Yeah. So if there's been settlement, from some of that, we might go out and do it in the middle of July when, it's still warm enough and the monsoons really haven't hit. Then August rolls around and all that rain settles that trench. Then yeah, we need to go back out and make it right. So it's still part within the auspice of the grant to be taken care of. June 31st. So as long as your claim is filed and documented before then, you're good. Yes, sir.
The fiber will be into all of the houses by June 30th?
Fiber to home, as long as you filled out your application. Our deadline for installation is September 22nd.
I did that twice. Once I got no acknowledgement, so I did it again and did get an email back, but
Okay.
I haven't seen, I'm just sort of, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of feedback on that. Yes, we're coming to your house.
Yeah, so what it
Here's
is,
the date we're gonna do it.
so what it is right now, and really done my best to put as much public communications out there as to kind of where we're at within the system and how we're running through. I don't maintain on the co-op side the little system that you're talking about where your application comes in and you get the ping back on your email. That's handled by Fujitsu, who's one of our technology partners here. The way our fiber rollout has worked is that in the spirit of the cooperative model is to serve the most underserved areas first. So Amalia, Costilla, Cuesta, and you'll see fiber start to roll north in through town. They've started to connect the last fiber loop because our intent is to not have any more mishaps like we had just recently with CenturyLink. So what we've done is we've created a redundant path. We actually have 3 of them. One that ties into Albuquerque through ReadyNet, who's just a partner of ours south of here. Direct path out to Denver and a direct path out to Phoenix. So irregardless of which line gets cut, it's still it's beaver proof. It's beaver, rain, you name it, it's proof. And that's the nice thing about fiber optics is it doesn't conduct electricity the way electric lines do. So if you get a lightning strike, it's not affected. The glass isn't affected by it. So your communications should never be down. That's one thing we really strive to push for, and really through the foresight of the individuals. I'm not on the technology side, but the guys that are in the technology side of our department have really done a good job to create the interconnect links out there, so to make sure that we have redundant paths. In doing that, it also ensured that we get the lowest bandwidth costs available, because now we're trunking in from some of the most major cities out there, like I said, Denver, Phoenix, and obviously we'll still carry traffic. It'll be our last resort out of the CenturyLink hub out of Albuquerque. Yes, sir.
If we got an email that says they're gonna put it in, doesn't matter how long they're gonna put it in at no cost, right?
Yes.
Are you saying that we should have got an email about this?
You should have already by now received email. If you've had your application in, what you want to do though is if you haven't seen any communications from us, give us a call. Because again, what's happened is we've received, when we started the rollout of this project, there wasn't a real clear, concise way. So they started sending paper applications. They were encouraging individuals to sign up on the web. What ended up happening is we got duplicate applications, and if we had 2 different people on the data entry side entering 2 different applications and they saw it hit within the system, you may have been deleted. And I would say not fully deleted, but you've either been deleted on paper or you've been deleted electronically. So that may be part of the cause of why you haven't received a communication. Well, 9 times out of 10, if you call, we'll find you because your application exists somewhere.
And what if you did make an application?
If you didn't make an application, you're outside of the auspice of the grant. December 31st was the deadline to sign up.
What's the best number to call?
2258, 758-2258, or 758-4838.
Would it be easier for the co-op in general to just send out emails to all people who are on the list? Instead of, otherwise you're going to tie up the phones big time.
So what we've done here recently is the co-op has brought on 6 new individuals that are just doing data entry because we're so far behind on getting everybody's application put through the system. Right now we have 14,950 requests for drop. That means we have 14,950 people wanting to be connected to the fiber optic network. We have an additional about 8,000 just requesting the fiber box, which means that they'll seek service elsewhere. That's going to be either TaosNet or somewhere else. So when you look at the full system, we have 29,000 members on our system. And out of the 29,000, we have roughly about 22,000 that have signed up for fiber optics. So we've just really been inundated because when the grant process started, we'd never done anything like this in a community of Taos where we didn't already have some type of technology that already existed within the community. We were dealing with old T1 lines from CenturyLink to carry our traffic communications until Kit Carson got their fiber up and running. So it's really been within about the last year to maybe year and a half that we ourselves have been operating off a fiber optic link to filter some of that traffic coming in. So now that it's in, now we have the task of getting everybody input into the system alphabetically by area and whether or not, I mean, the problem that we have is that some businesses have 6 meters and which one of those 6 meters does that individual want served, or do they want all 6? And one perfect case in point is Sagebrush Inn has 11 meters. Now, if you've ever been to Sagebrush, you know they have about 6 different buildings. So they want a NID or fiber optic device to each building. So now we're having to kind of undo the strings and say, okay, well, what do you want, sir? Because you put an application in for all 11 meters, but one feeds your basement, so what is it? So it's a mix and a tie of the residential and business side that we're kind of facing the obstacles.
2 questions. One is, some of us, can you compare and contrast the quality of the fiber optic versus the other options?
Night and day.
Right, and I'm sure that it is. And the other is, just, most of these people are probably gonna be interested from a residential standpoint, and how will that actual rollout, that install happen? I actually have gotten a call recently, they're trying to get from the feeder line to my house.
Yes.
But they didn't, they was on the wrong side of the road, so they have to go back and get a road cut permit to do that.
Yeah.
But they'll do that, then I guess there'll be a Axel Kit Carson representative to come out and do the final part. So
Yeah.
I'm guessing that's a conduit connection initially, and then Kit Carson will do the fiber from the road.
So what it is, it's a main trunk line, and depending on the area that you're in, there's probably a 48 count fiber in there. They'll tap off of one of those fiber lines, run it directly to your house. So out of one fiber, we can serve 360 residents. So if you have 24 fiber count in there, or 24 pair, which is actually 48 lines of fiber, then you have the ability, I mean, there's plenty of capacity within that line to be served. So what takes place is that once you get the call, you'll get scheduled for installation. They'll pull the fiber from wherever the main tap line is through the conduit directly to your house. You'll have to provide us an area or location where you want the NID, which is the device that converts the fiber to Ethernet into your house, and let us know where you want that placed, because where maybe CenturyLink has it now isn't where you want it, or whoever you're using right now.
I'm using the radio.
So, yeah, so it may make more sense to have it in the garage or somewhere that's less likely to be seen. So right now is when you have the option to really choose where you want your communications hub to be. So make sure you map that out, let that know. As far as your first question with regards to the quality between fiber and what everybody's been used to, we just rolled out gigabit service at Taos Pueblo, which is kind of unheard of. So here's a community that's existed for probably well over 2,000 years that doesn't have electricity to the main part of the Pueblo, but they're taking a gig service worth of internet speed. And really what it does is, if you've ever, had a Kindle or a tablet where you read a book and you flip the page, I don't think any of us have ever experienced the luxury of being able to click a web page and seeing it do that quick. So now what it's done is it's allowed the ability for us to really engage, number one, with the schools, to start piping over internet traffic from like the University of New Mexico in Albuquerque, for example, to be able to host online seminar classes where they can tap into the University of New Mexico's philosophy, for example. They're holding online philosophy classes that now those students can tap in and view that real time as if it was there, or as if they were in the classroom with them. So the quality of service, it's going to really open some eyes. It's going to change the way Taos has known fiber, internet just in general. And what we're really hoping for, and what the co-op is really trying to bank on, is the economic development aspect of bringing some technology companies to Taos that now have the ability, that maybe don't want to be based in Seattle or New York, where gigabit service was or typically only available, that now they're having the opportunity to move to Taos, create 16 to 30 high-paying jobs in the technology field. And you're really starting to see that branch out. We're starting to get more and more requests at the co-op, and the co-op has become an economic development hub in and of itself just because of the fiber. So we have a request on the table right now for Google to bring 300 technology jobs here. And really, without the fiber, it wouldn't have happened. Average median income for that technology field is about $80,000 to $120,000. So now we're trying to get the universities on board to start being versed in technology classes that really can take advantage of this, so our kids can stay closer to home and hold the higher paying, higher technical degree jobs without having to ship them off. So, yes, sir.
For those who are ignorant of most of this, or maybe didn't receive these applications, December 31st was the cutoff.
Was the cutoff.
what happens to somebody who might be interested in after December 31st?
So the burden for payment goes on you. So the
What?
the payment, what was covered under the grant, which is roughly anywhere between $1,500 to $2,500, depending on where the drop to your house is, that burden falls within on you now.
So if you want to apply, figure on $1,500 to $2,500.
About $1,500 to $2,500.
When will Weimar residents likely see service? And I should preference this with, I asked Steve Wooldorf this question in December of 2013, and he told me April of 2014. So, a year and a half later, I'm asking you now.
So realistically, and I'm going to give you my honest to God realistic answer, because I deal with this every day. You're probably looking within the next 60 to 90 days. And I would say 60 to 90 realistically, because we've made all our main line connections already, and now it's time to start making the drops. Like I said, we only have till September 22nd to have everybody done and connected. So right now we're running off about 105 timeline date to get everybody in Taos connected.
We're talking about,
Yes, sir.
bringing the fiber optics and choosing where you want it in your home.
Mhm.
I assume it winds up with some kind of wireless modem. Are those wireless modems, do they have a distance of broadcasting any further than competition century link, where you can pick it up, how far away?
A lot of that is going to be technology, and what the grant covers, it covers the NID, basically the network interface device that converts the fiber optic to Ethernet cable. Anything that you do inside the home is entirely up to you. So if you want a broadcast system with additional hops around the house to make sure you push the wireless wherever you want it to go, that's entirely up to you. And those devices the co-op gives you one, which is roughly about a $60 device. You'll get about a 200 foot range out of that. If you're trying to serve a second guest house or something like that, then you probably want to create your own network interface device in itself, because after about 250 to 300 feet, you get significant loss in the bandwidth. Yes?
You had given us 2 phone numbers for checking
Yeah.
applications. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, 758-2258 is the main number of the co-op, and then 758-4838 is the technology side. I think they're cutting me off now.
Thank you.
I talked to a plumber and said, how much is it going to cost if they put a sewer line above me? He came out and looked at it and he said, $14,000. So that's just a figure. Think about it. Save your pennies. What's coming? Okay, well, thanks for your patience. If you want to get up and stretch, we're going to move right on to our next section, CC&Rs.
Offer refreshments and stuff.
Well, yeah, there are things in the back, but our time is moving along here. So, just out of curiosity, how many of you don't care about CC&Rs? Okay. Couple. Okay. We're going to have some talk about that. And Rick Reeves is a local realtor. He's a resident. He's my neighbor. He's going to kind of take over and do some introductions and carry on.
I'm not going to say much of anything other than that we've been discussing restrictions and covenants, and the fact that many of our restrictions in the next several years will be expiring, and that's been a concern of many of our members. And so today we have local real estate attorney Larry Van Eaton, who is going to speak to us. Many of you, he has probably written your warranty deed for many of your properties, because he handles quite a few of those in Taos. And so he'll talk about restrictions and covenants, and then you can ask him questions, and maybe this will help us move forward in trying to decide what to do with some of these expirations coming up in the next few years. So, Larry? Oh, there. Okay. Thanks, Larry. Do you want if you want me to pass anything out, let me know. Okay.
Okay,
as Rick said, I'm Larry Van Eaton. I'm a local real estate attorney here. That's the primary area of my practice, though I certainly did hold myself out as a specialist in that area. Also, I want to throw in the standard lawyer's disclaimer that basically anything I say here today is just for informational purposes, and that we're not forming an attorney-client relationship. As Cuba Gooding would say, if you want to form a lawyer-client relationship with an attorney, show them the money. So basically, this is just information, and if you have a specific problem, I would strongly urge you to consult an attorney of your own choice. First of all, what are restrictive covenants? This is not a court definition, but it's how I think of them in my own mind. They're really, I look at them as private zoning or private development standards. And usually what happens when a developer puts together a subdivision, they do a subdivision plat showing the lots, and they also put together a declaration of covenants, conditions, and restrictions, which in shorthand is CC&Rs. So those can govern such things as single or multiple family residences, building setbacks, whether trailers, manufactured housing is allowed, building setbacks, building height, minimum square footage, architectural styles, whether home occupations, cottage industries, or commercial use is allowed, and so on and so forth. Just to kind of illustrate a problem or something that I encountered this week was a restriction that said buildings would be limited to a southwestern architectural style or a southwestern adobe architectural style. And so what does that mean? What does that mean? Does that mean Pueblo flat roof?
I wouldn't think so.
Does it include territorial style with a pitched roof and dormers?
I would think so.
So basically, that's one of the first problems with restrictive covenants, is whether or not they're clearly written or whether there's some ambiguity in the covenants. And next, here's the dry definition of restrictive covenants by the courts. And they say, historically, restrictive covenants have been used to assure uniformity of development and use of a residential area to give the owners of lots within such an area some degree of environmental stability. To completely ensure a plan of residential development, the grantor must impose reciprocal restrictive covenants on the property for the common benefit of all his grantees and their assigns. Restrictions as to the use of land are mutual, reciprocal, equitable easements in the nature of servitudes in favor of the owners of other lots within the restricted area and constitute property rights which run with the land. So basically, a restrictive covenant can be a valuable property right that if your property is bound by a restrictive covenant, same as your neighbors, if you're in the same subdivision, and if you believe that those restrictions increase the value of your property, it is a valuable property right that you you would be able to go to court and enforce those restrictive covenants. Basically, in enforcing restrictive covenants, you have a maximum of 10 years to enforce any violation of a restrictive covenant. That's the maximum statute of limitations at law. And you can even be facing shorter limitations if the person that's violating the covenant can prove the equitable defenses of laches, waiver, or estoppel. So basically, in trying to enforce a restrictive covenant, you could either sue for damages or for an injunction to enjoin continued violation of the covenant. And further, to also, in addition to the defenses of statute of limitations, if it's more than 10 years old, waiver or estoppel, the New Mexico courts on occasion have recognized that change conditions can prevent enforcement of a restrictive covenants, although they are not really, that's not a favored defense, and they've only recognized that very occasionally. So even if enforcement of a restrictive covenant will cause an economic hardship to the person, that's not enough to show a change condition that would prevent the enforcement of it. One illustrative case is a restriction in deeds in the original town of Alamogordo town site, where all the deeds in the original town site prohibited the sale of alcoholic beverages. So we come along, 80, 90 years later, and of course restaurants want to sell beer and wine. They want to be able to sell alcoholic beverages. And even though this restriction in these original Alamogordo town site deeds, even though they caused this restaurant economic harm to the extent that it didn't make them as competitive as restaurants outside the original town site, that was not enough to preclude enforcement of the restriction. So, in finding out whether your property has particular restrictions, you can either look at your deed and see if your deed references a declaration of covenants, conditions, and restrictions that was filed by the developer. Oftentimes, deeds that were written for the Weimar area, the restrictions were imposed on a lot-by-lot basis, but most of the Weimar area deeds that were sold by the Weimar family or the Cunninghams, they do have similar restrictive covenants. But if your deed is not clear, you can also look at your title policy. If your title policy references a declaration of restrictive covenants, they would have the recording information for that, and you can always go to your title company, or you can go to the courthouse and pull a copy of that declaration of restrictive covenants and read about the covenants that bind your property. So that's it in a nutshell. Yes.
What's all this fuss about? Why? Why are we talking about this? Well, let me just say that there are, I think, 8 different sections of the Weimar overall development that have CC&Rs. So they're a little bit different here and there, but as Larry said, they're all about the same. We said, well, so what? So we got them. They have, I believe, every one of these has an expiration period, 25 years. Now, I built my house 8 years ago, so mine started again 8 years ago. So I've got a few years left. Some of you, yours have expired or are about to expire, et cetera, et cetera. So the question came up, well, so mine expires, so what? That means you don't have any. So I said to somebody, does that mean that if I don't have any and I decide I want to put a manufactured home on my property, I can do it? And they said, yes. And I said, there's a 17-foot height restriction at the county. Could I build up to that? And they said, yes. I said, well, who says what or can I or cannot do? It's the county then. Or if you're in the city, the city. And their restrictions are usually far more generous and liberal than the ones we have now. So, selfishly, I said, okay, I want my property to look nice. It looks nice. I take care of it. I'm happy with what my neighbors are doing. What if my neighbor or what if he puts a trailer on the property, right on my property line, but on his, a big old trailer? Can he have it there? The CC&R say no. So what recourse do I have to say, hey, you got to move that? And we have these kinds of issues going on today. So what we have done, starting with Peter Wengert in the past, and now still doing it to a little bit, Rick's the man. I help him out. He says, no, not me. And I say, no, not me. Here's where we are. We say, okay, neighbor, you don't like what your neighbor's got up there. Let's say he's got a big mobile home there. What can you do about it? Because they call us and say, I don't like this. I got my house for sale. My property values are going to be down. And Rick can answer that as a down, I guess, probably. What can we do? So we say to the neighbors, look, have you talked to this person? No, I'm afraid to because of whatever. So we say, look, go talk to him. Talk to your other neighbor. Not the one that has the trailer, but someone else. And maybe the two of you go over there and reason with them. And maybe they'll say, hey, it's only here for a month. I'm sorry. I'll do something about it. And we've had a recent thing where there's a large RV. They have restrictions on there. And they've said, wait until winter if you could, please. And we said, absolutely. They're going to build something to encase it. So, it's not going to be visible, et cetera, et cetera. And so most of the time that works. And Rick and I have gone to homes, and it's a little tricky to talk to people. Hi, we're here from the neighborhood association, and da-da-da-da-da. And most people are very polite, very nice about it. Some are a little bit tweaked. But if restrictions expire and they say, have you got restrictions? And you say no. They say, don't talk to me, buddy. I can do whatever I want as long as the county says I can do it. So that's where we are. That's why we're in this issue with the plea of, if you got a problem, call Rick or call me. And I'll tell you, I rode my bike today. There are 2 trailers very near where I live, not real close, but and one's on Blumenschein, and the other is just right off Weimar. I hadn't seen it before. I'm not looking for it, but there it was, big old trailer. So, reestablish yours. So I went down to the county. What do we have to do? This is what they told me. They said, you write out your own restrictions, file them, give them to us, and give us $25, and we'll file it. And I said, well, so what? Where does it go from there? Well, I don't know.
Exactly.
But it's filed.
Nowhere.
And somebody else is going to have to answer that. Maybe you can. But what if, let's see, there are 2 of us that don't have restrictions, and this one does, and they come squawking to us. We're going to go, forget it, bud. And a recent thing came up of there are 2 people in an area. They're trying to sell their homes. Somebody right near there has an auto repair shop type thing going on. Big cranes, lots of cars outside. What do? I guess they're still there. I don't know. So this is why we're trying to talk about this, trying to say, check your restrictions, check them. Do they run out? Have they run out? If so, you can get them refiled. Just take them down and say, I want to refile these. And legalistically, they said go somewhere else within the county system. It's the county that does it. So that's why we're talking about this, and,
Doctor, you haven't made a case for anybody, I don't see where one person refiling protects them from their neighbors doing whatever they want after theirs expire. So one guy can, anyway,
yeah,
what's that?
he can talk about that. We talked about that. So what if we filed them, and what can we do? Well, we'll try to be nice guys and go to the neighbors and say, could you? And they can say no. And then what is the recourse? That's where it gets down to. That's where the legalistic element comes to be.
I'd like to ask the attorney, okay, a lot of these expire 25 years.
Sit down.
I bought mine home in 2010, but the CC&R is referenced Weimer's original, and the data, it says 25 years from that date, which was 1991. So it expires then next year, not 25 years from when I purchased the house. Is that correct?
Again, although somebody might have a different opinion, that would be my opinion, is that, yes, they would expire 25 years from the date of the original imposition. And, yeah, I think the concern about if only one person reimposes restrictive covenants but their neighbors don't, it might be one of those situations where neighbors want to get together, and if there are most of the neighbors in an area are agreeable to extend or reimpose the restrictive covenants, they could do so probably on several properties at one time. They could say, Mr. and Mrs. A, Mr. and Mrs. B, Mr. and Mrs. C, etc., we agree to reimpose and extend the restrictive covenants on lots A, B, C, and D, etc., as those covenants are set out in these deeds, and recite the recording information in your deeds. So yes, I agree that they probably do have more force if they're not imposed piecemeal, and if several neighbors in the same area will reimpose them at the same time.
Can you do some of them and not all of them? Reimpose them, or you have to take all of them?
It's one of those situations that I think that if the restrictions have expired, I think the neighbors in that area would be free to pick and choose, or actually reimpose a new set of restrictive covenants that only adopts part of the previous ones.
Peter told me 4 or 5 years ago, before he left, that those covenants that were written, that in everybody's deeds, aren't enforceable.
That would probably be a court test.
It's never been tested.
I don't know one way or the other. So.
Is the language ever up for some kind of editing? I mean, for example, the one about cars is so technical. It's like if you have one garage, you can convert it then to a playroom and have 5 cars all over your house constantly. Instead of just having it be more affirmative, like we'd like to not just see cars all over, or some language that's more an affirmation of what the neighborhood's about. We don't want to hear dogs barking 24/7 instead of technicalities, because those make them, everyone can get around to technicality. You're a lawyer.
Sure.
So to just make it an intention, this is what our neighborhood's about. If you're going to buy some property here, this is what we're trying to do. And then keep it on a neighbor basis, because there's no way to enforce that stuff. All those causes more harm than good, because people can say, well, I'm doing it by the letter of the law, and then they're just slamming it down your face,
You're saying they're complying strictly with with the
letter
letter,
of the
but not
law,
the spirit of it.
taken advantage, they're not with the spirit of the thing. And so I think to just look at them real simple, affirmations, here's what we're about, you know, it's a shared space, sound, sight, you know, smell.
And again, that would be something for people within a neighborhood to consult with an attorney and make sure that they're on the same page with the attorney in terms of drafting the covenants. I mean, you know, having only general guidelines, that there's probably a fine line that you have to walk between just having general guidelines and knowing what is and is not prohibited. So where that exactly falls, again, is something that you would need to discuss with an attorney.
I'm just saying get around, don't use attorneys. They're not enforceable. It's like so many laws that are just crummy laws, they get abused. And don't have it be technical, just start from the get-go. Here's what we're about on a neighbor basis. We would, you know, we're about this and we're gonna talk to you about it because as a whole, we've agreed to try to comply in this certain direction and you know that coming in and keep it neighborly. You know, there's too many rules and if they're not enforceable, what's the point? Get people talking again instead of just hiring a lawyer to,
Well,
you know.
You know, maybe, you know, it's, maybe the neighborhood association in terms of having a statement, you know, a statement of purpose or whatever, could say that these are the values we're trying to enforce. But again, as you say, that statement of purpose is not a legally enforceable document.
Right, so we gotta call Rick or Bob, make them do the dirty work or hire a lawyer?
Yes.
It's sort of
Well,
crazy.
let me just add that that's one of the things, that, hey, we're not lawyers.
Yeah.
We're just residents. We don't have any enforcement. We don't like to do this. And I've talked to a couple of people, I said, look, you got to squawk about your neighbor, go talk to them. I mean, I don't even know who these people are. And I get so many times, oh, well, I don't want to do it. And I said, well, you know, I'm not a hitman or And one other thing is we have no, even with our CC&Rs, we have no legal authority to do anything about it. We could, you know, cajole people and try to use common sense and et cetera, et cetera. But if, let's say there are 3 people involved, 2 of them say we've got covenants and one says, I don't care, you can go stick it in the sand, you're gonna have to go do legal activities on your own. We don't have money in the FNA. We're not gonna hire lawyers. So what it is, people, it ain't us, it's all of us, and that's why we're trying to say, maybe we can bring some awareness to all of this, how to deal with it effectively. And CC&Rs at least is something to say, gee, I've got it written down on my property, and, you know, isn't it kind of nice? Because mine's valued at X number of dollars, and, you know, your trailer there is knocked down by $5,000. You know, I don't know, I'm just making this up.
Bob, just to put a fine point on it, my point was simply the rules, technically, the way they're written, can be kind of used against us. So you avoid that neighborly, like, hey, let's work together, and they're going, no, well, I've satisfied this requirement, you know, they're getting around it, and then boom, end of conversation. So that's what I'm saying. Better to just have compliance.
Go ahead, Bob.
Larry,
Yes.
I would like to say to the young lady's comments, ditto. We've gone over this so many times, and from what I understand, there aren't any questions about really some bizarre development in the middle of a community, which is really hard to imagine. You're gonna have to get some really strange people to come in and want to put an auto shop on Weimer Road. And if it can't be done, the only thing, if there's nothing that is legally binding in these CCRs we're involved with, they're good ideas and they're meaningful, and you'd like to think that most people would abide by it. But other than that, just as Bob says, I think Bob and Rick will be our
You know,
basic speakers, and we'll
you know, sometimes I do understand your cynicism about whether the courts will actually take effective action. But if the covenant is clear, and if the violation is clear cut, then the cases I have read from at least the appellate courts, and those aren't the gray ones, but the appellate courts are not afraid to enforce restrictive covenants in the appropriate circumstances.
Do we have the option as an association to write some common sense restrictions and then have like a group vote, and if we get 75% approval or something, impose them on all the residents in the association? Is that an option?
Or suggest them, whatever.
I think...
Because you're never going to get 100%.
Yeah.
The guy who has the auto shop,
Yeah.
he's going to vote against it. But if you got a large majority, is that a
Well, I think
possibility?
I think that basically, first of all, I don't know the answer to that strictly, but some of the neighborhood associations, like Stagecoach Hills, and some of the others out near the Quail Ridge or the Tennis Ranch, they do have neighborhood development or zoning standards that are actually, in some cases, I think, stricter than the county's general zoning standards. So it's something that you would need to read the city land use ordinance or the county land use ordinance. Is the Foothills Association both county and town?
So,
Yeah.
Mostly town.
But you would have to read those zoning, those land use ordinances and see what powers the neighborhood association would have to ask for stricter zoning standards than are generally in place.
But we are not a homeowners association, nor do we want to be, because then we're subject to all the rules and regulations of the laws.
yeah.
So we need to stay away from
I-
creating anything that we could theoretically enforce. We want to be in that position. We're a loosely formed association, and we don't want any powers, otherwise we can get our
yeah.
suit.
Right on. Right on.
So we just bought our company in January, so I'm not real familiar with the way everything is set up, but I mean, certainly this happens with other neighborhoods where the original covenants expire. Is there a standard that's followed, like the subgroup forms, kind of like what you were saying, forms basically a new set of covenants, and then those get put in place for another 25 years?
Well,
Or 50 years, or?
I think, this is just my personal opinion, but I think the proper way to draft covenants is to say they'll be in effect for an initial period of, say, 25 years, and then they will automatically be reimposed for additional 10-year periods unless and until 75% of the owners, or whatever percentage is agreed upon, agree to amend, modify, rescind them. So if you're drafting them properly, you're not left in a lurch with them expiring and going into a void, but they would be reimposed for additional 10-year periods unless people agree to change them.
Larry, my understanding was, and correct me if I'm wrong, these CCRs are set up and developments are set up. They keep it for 25 years because within that time, you pretty much have a standard neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way it's going to be. The homes that were built are going to be like
not if the covenants have expired.
So we can recommend everybody, if you can think of it, renew your covenant. May not be 100% effective, but it's something where a significant part of the community renewing their CCR sends a message and sort of stands up somehow, I would guess, I'm not a lawyer.
If covenants are extended, there should be language saying that this extension of the covenants is an appurtenant burden that runs with the land. In other words, it's a benefit and a burden that goes with the land and binds successive owners. So, and a lawyer would be able to come up with the appropriate language so that the covenant runs with the land to successive owners. Excuse me.
But that's for each title.
Huh?
Is that for each title?
Well, I mean, again, I think...
My only point is that everybody in here that's built a house, we'd love to keep the covenants, but everybody's got a lot that hasn't built yet. He's saying, what the hell do I need these for?
Just one observation. Covenants, conditions, and restrictions exist on neighborhoods across this country, and the residents absolutely benefit, and we have benefited in that we don't have metal buildings, we don't have people raising hogs. There's a lot of things that we don't want in our neighborhood, and the fact that these things are expiring is a problem. And now, there may not be a practical way to address it, but I would suggest to you that if we could come together and get 95% compliance and educate the property owners in our neighborhood and get permanent conditions and restrictions put in place, like, or automatically renewing them, like most neighborhoods have, it would benefit us all in the future. You're gonna see a lot of things you don't like if we let these go. Somebody will build a metal shop in their yard, somebody will raise hogs, and you're not gonna like it.
Can I ask you to identify yourself? I'm sorry.
Pardon?
You want to join the group? What is your name?
I'm Vince White.
Vince White, okay.
My wife's Marty.
Hi.
We own 2 properties in one.
He sells hogs.
Nobody has mentioned that we also have zoning on our property, and a large portion of the Weimar area is zoned R1. And if you go into the town and look at the restrictions to R1, you can't have hogs. I mean, I think the CC&Rs are the most important, but we have this other thing, so there's certain things that can't happen, even if ours expired. But as a whole, as a group, we really should get together and extend this.
That was one point I don't know if I did touch on earlier, but if there's a conflict between the governmental zoning and your private restrictive covenants, the private restrictive covenants would trump the governmental zoning. In other words, if there's part of Weimar that is zoned R4 and someone says, oh, this looks like a nice lot, it's zoned R4, I'll throw up a fourplex here. But if the covenants on that lot say single-family residences and a one acre minimum for a residence, then you're restricted to that single-family residence and you can't actually build to the density the zoning allows. So yes, your covenants are important if you want to keep stricter standards than the zoning.
Thank you very much. Oh boy, isn't this fun? Okay, we got 15 minutes and then we got to shove out of here. So,
Election.
all right, we'll go right down the line. George, you want to talk about finances quick? All of it's going to be quick.
I made 40 copies of the budget. Hopefully, it looked like they're all gone, so you can share them with them. I'll walk you through it really quickly. If you have any questions, you're gonna have to shout it out because I'm gonna try and get this moving. On the first page is the income and expense by month, and the first one is by account. This is the amount of money that has come in. This is for last year, and this kind of shows you where the money is coming from. The majority of it, as you might expect, is coming from the association dues. There are some of you that give a donation to the association because we are a 501c3. You can take all that off the taxes. And then the third income comes from the Magpie, which is not a lot, but it's something. On the expense side, last year, as you might see, the majority of the money that we expended on our budget was for the Magpie expenses, the meeting cost, website, consultation, postage, beautification, printing, and so forth. And that's a percentage on the right side. You can see right to the pie chart. The majority of last year's expenses was on the Magpie. This year it will be the Magpie and the handbook. The handbook costs us around $700 to print. On the third page is more of a breakdown. I won't go through every little thing here. We did in 2014 budgeted $3,604. That was what we anticipated to be our income. Our income actually was $3,150. So we were down some. But if you look at the expenses, we had budgeted $3,392, and our actual expenses turned out to be $1,400. There were many expenses that did not come in. We had thought we would do some more maintenance on the Higgins Park. That did not happen, and so we had those funds. So there's a number of things that we did not work on that. Let me stop with this budget part here, and let's ask if there's any particular questions on the income and the expenses. We try and anticipate the budget on the previous year, and so this is what we came up with last year. But so, any particular questions on the income or the expenses? Okay. On the very last page is what you currently have in the treasury. So our treasury, we have $14,762. We get very minimal interest from the checking account and very minimal interest from the CD. But anyway, we have $14,762, and I have quite a bit of checks here. So that will probably be over $15,000 by the time I add all those in. So that's a quick overview of the budget. Yes?
What are the other current assets?
5,032.
That's a CDs. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, what bank is charging us for banking services?
Well, we haven't really paid any banking services as such. Oh.
It was an expense.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And I'm just wondering, can we find a different bank that doesn't?
There was a issue with the Mexico Public Regulations Commission. They had misplaced some of our papers, and they were charging us a fee because we had not filed those papers. I had to go back and ask the bank for some checks and things that we had actually done, and so that's what that cost was, because we had to. They said that we were not authorized to have a 501c3 because we hadn't paid our dues. We had paid our dues. They lost a lot of the documents, so I had to go back and locate all those documents, and some of that was at the bank.
And they immediately offered to reimburse us, right?
Well,
Okay.
Yeah, right.
No.
Okay. Thanks to George for
Hey, George.
doing all this. One more thing, the third time's a charm. I'm looking for a new treasurer. So if anybody has a interest, talk with me after the meeting.
Thanks, George.
Okay, Pete's going to talk about our infrastructure. Let me just sum up that last thing about CC&Rs. I talked to him down there. The clerk said, yes, bring papers. I said, well, do they need to be made up by a lawyer? They said, no. You can copy them by hand. You can type them out. They will file them. It's $25 a property if you do it individually. And then I went to talk to the county planner. That was a whole different thing. And I said, can we just do it as one thing? Absolutely not. No. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. Talk to your neighbors.
Okay. Hi, I'm Pete, and I'm not going to take up any more time with infrastructure. I think it's been covered pretty extensively. But I would like to talk about the neighborhood cleanup. I've been doing this every year. This is going to be about my, I think, 7th year that I've done it. And every year, it's been a great success. Usually we have 18, 20 people that show up, different faces every year. We have always pulled 3 truckloads of trash out of the neighborhood. And we have a little recycling center. It's set up right there at the corner of at the health department, the northwest corner of Maestas and Weimar. And we will be there Saturday. It's in the Magpie. It's about the 3rd Saturday in May. And you will be getting a couple email notices as the date comes closer. And I want to thank especially the people that clean up on an ongoing basis. And the people, sometimes I'll see a graffiti tag on the mailboxes and say, oh, I got to get that this afternoon, and I go back to do it and it's already done. You guys are all awesome. This is a great neighborhood, and I think that we send a signal that we care about our neighborhood by keeping it clean, keeping the graffiti off the mailboxes, and just kind of year-round ongoing cleanup by everybody, as well as this big spring cleanup. So I hope to see you there. Thanks.
That's a lot of fun. Bob Feeler, he's the one that does our communications. And I'll tell you, everybody that participates, we're all volunteers. So
It's May 16th, Pete. May 16th.
Oh, thanks.
I do the Magpie, and Casey had sent out a system email asking for input. The only input I got was from Reliable Sunny, and Casey gave us a little input. Nobody else submitted anything to be put into the Magpie. And I'm disappointed with that, and I would encourage you to, if there's something you'd like to see the neighborhood know about, give it to me and we'll put it in. You talked about expenses, and the Magpie represents a majority of the association's expenses. Just in this last issue, we printed 360 copies. The postage alone was $156. The printing was $259, and a couple, $3 for the little tabs that we put them together with. We have a website, and when we print a Magpie, we then scan the Magpie into the website, and it's out there for everyone to see. I'm proposing that that be the primary distribution. Casey tells me she has email addresses for all but 35 or 40 of the residents and owners here, so those people would have access on the website to the Magpie in that format. And I'd like to propose that we get away from the paper copy, do it with the website.
So moved.
Any disagreements? For the disagreement?
I don't have a computer.
Okay. We anticipated there'd be a few that didn't have that. And if Casey doesn't already have it, if you'll see that she has you as somebody that does not have
ready access to a computer, then we can print off a copy from the website and either mail, or maybe the Roadrunners could deliver it.
I suggest that we have one more publishing, because that goes to
Okay.
almost everybody, and then have really the front page just be, this is the last hard copy of Magpie.
And
what
describe
gonna
what
do.
we're going to do.
And if you want to receive a hard copy, to send a postcard or something to the mailing address, and that way we'll create a labeling system too.
Always mention that we're going green.
Yeah.
There was a question in back.
What are Roadrunners?
Roadrunners were a sub-organization within the FNA that was supposed to have somebody responsible for each little area around the neighborhood, and they would coordinate and educate the people within their area. Frankly, I think it's kind of faded into inactivity.
I think the email has really helped with communications.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I think with Casey using the email and sending blanket notices to everyone, it kind of took over the need of the Roadrunners, but like this lady that doesn't have access to a computer, I was suggesting that maybe those Roadrunners could be the delivery person. We could do away with the U.S. Postal Service costs totally.
Good point.
Bob, do you have that list of Roadrunners? Because I think I have a copy.
I think
It's in the front.
it's in the front of the,
Probably.
No, it's not.
Oh, you guys
it's
figured
not
out.
in there,
Just
okay,
gave up.
it's on the website.
I just have one suggestion, and that is when the Magpie is being published on the website, that an email blast go out to notify people, because
That
most
is-
of us don't check the website regularly.
I think that's the sort of thing that you put on your blanket.
Yeah,
Memos.
I think that we could probably go to something even more often and shorter, just like, here's a snippet article, and then I would probably embed that article in the email, but also send people to a website if they want to. Yeah.
And along those lines, of kind of a personal maybe suggestion is, if there is a article or report that tends to kind of point fingers, especially, those things should be signed by who wrote them. Some of them come across as somewhat of opinion pieces, and it's unclear who wrote them. It's
Okay.
not clear. It sounds like it's coming from the group. There's 2 issues ago, and I actually lived next door to 3 of the people who pointed at, and they all thought I said something, and it was awkward. And
Okay.
So,
Understood, and I agree.
yeah, thanks.
Any other thoughts or comments on the Magpie? One more. Yes, ma'am.
Do we have a Facebook page?
No.
Because it could also be on there, because since I moved here last fall, I then got on what's the weekly paper, on that, and now I heard about the police, so I get snippets from that. So I don't know if that's something that would even be good to have.
I think the website gives us adequate exposure and opportunity to communicate with everybody in the neighborhood.
Well, it's also who wants to do it. It's
Yeah.
another.
Okay.
Bob maintains the website.
Yeah. All right.
Good. Any other thoughts or comments?
Go for it.
Thank you for
Thanks,
listening.
Bob. Okay, let's see, Casey, membership.
Oh, well, I don't think of myself as membership so much as just communication or correspondence clerk, I think is what I call myself on the website. And I think that's helped a lot. I have not really campaigned to have people become members, but the directory clearly was a little bit of a carrot, because I think we probably picked up maybe 50 members today alone. Last year we had 62 members. There's probably 330 people who are on our mailing list that we contact. There's probably 400 properties within the Foothills neighborhood, but a lot of those are still under, developer names and, multiple lots unbuilt. But anyway, I just think that email is a good way to be communicating, and for those who don't, we'll make sure that we have a way to get you information, and maybe the Roadrunner is the way to go. Yes?
So who exactly is in the directory?
I put into the directory all of the property owners that I was able to identify from the assessor, the public information through the county assessor's tax page. There are some people who aren't in there because I didn't have a phone number or an address, that kind of thing. And I did leave out some of the commercial properties. I'm not sure if I put in like Holy Cross, and then there's a, there's a medical center, there's a dialysis unit. All those people are within our Foothills neighborhood, mostly because we want to have a partnership or some sort of agreement with them about, the lighting and stuff like that, parking, and we did get some compliance with that several years ago. Not we, because I wasn't part of it then, but yeah, I tried to include as many people. There's 320 people, I believe, in that book. And I've already gotten a few errors on information. But anyway, that's it.
Thank you,
So-
Kate.
Thanks, Kate.
Sunny?
We're good.
We're good? Okay. Always, yes,
If I can just inject for a second, at the board meeting.
time's up.
At the board meeting, we came up with an idea that something should be done with respect to the mailboxes. Mailboxes are mud, snow, they're rain, and they're pretty annoying. John Johnson and I are going to see us, we're going to be scouting the neighborhood, checking the number of mailboxes, et cetera. And our plan is to try to have we wanted a gravel company to set up a nice layer of gravel, so whenever you go to the mailbox, you will not be walking in the yard. We'll let you know when we do it.
All right,
What I'd like to do is just have all of the board members stand up, please. And I'd like you to I'll start with me, and we'll just tell you our names so you can see who we are. My name is Robert Knudsen. I am the vice president. Yes. Okay.
I'm George Adamito, the treasurer.
Tom Kemper?
Bob Watt,
Karen Sumac.
John Crouch.
Steve Hebron. Steve Mack. Kip Price.
Okay, thank you.
thanks.
Kip is our newest member, just from our last board meeting. If you people want to come to a board,
I've proven that there is a railroad in Taos County.
yes. So again, this is all a volunteer thing, and Casey is just she's doing a super job here, as is George, and I'm not doing very much, and so a real thanks to everybody for really participating, and we welcome comments, commentary, input, etc. So if you want to come to our board meetings, hey, please do so. Okay, real quick now, social, we always keep talking about let's have a social. We don't get anybody to say, my house. So if anybody says, yeah, my house would be great, we'd love to have something May, June, before it gets too late into the winter next year. So that's up there. We had a real good one a couple of years ago, but so that's out there. Elections, okay, we don't have a president because nobody wants to do that job. And George, bless his heart, he's been doing this for years, and he says, look, I'm burned out, I'm tired. We need somebody that's got some fiscal responsibility and really likes to do this. And George, it doesn't take a whole lot of time, does it?
Not really.
No.
This is the biggest part right now.
Right, all right. Surely somebody would love to stand up and say, me, after the meeting. Yes, thank you. Okay, again, Kip, new board member. Is there any new business anybody wants to bring up? Any other subjects of concern? Yes, ma'am.
I'm Mary Lowe from Kaida also, and we do have a neighbor with a pit bull, 2 pit bulls, but sometimes the larger one is off the leash and not in the backyard, and he thinks he owns the road as well as the front of all of his property. So that is a problem, and I'm trying to address it by finding out who the renters
owners are in there, but I can't go to the door without getting to actually speak to them, because I just like to say that that's
Animal control.
Animal control.
Right on. Animal control.
I don't think so. Well, and there is animal control, and I have heard of another group that takes care of problem owners and dogs, an intervention. But I have to do some research to find out about that too. But anyway, be careful if you're walking around Calle del Oso, because on the southern side is where this monster lives.
I'll tell you, 1 year ago, the boy that I mentor in middle school was attacked by 2 Rottweilers, and they almost killed him. Almost. He got airlifted to Albuquerque. They saved his life, and he's back. But this is a problem. Animal control. I think this should be a no-brainer. And this person that had these dogs, they'd called animal control before 4 times. They did nothing. So now they're alert after this kid had a problem. Yes,
I
ma'am.
don't know why you couldn't even call the police.
Yes.
You call dispatch is what you call for animal stuff.
I'd have to just give them the address, because I don't know.
1127 Calle de Oso, Tony Duran.
You know, a simple phone call to 758-2217, explain the problem.
It's
We have
his
a new animal
nephew.
control gal in the town, doing a heck of a job. I guarantee you she will take care of it.
Great.
The
Yes, sir.
interesting thing was, people from home are going around the neighborhood, get in our car, put us in a car, and drove us past the dangerous dog, and we got out again.
Good way to get around. Up.
I'd like a round of applause for you as a vice president.
Hey, right on.
And Sonny Redmond, who does so much.
Oh,
work.
yes.
Yes. We've got some real standouts and people that really are concerned with beautifying this area and keeping it up, and so thank you all. And please talk to your neighbors, communicate with them, and again, we'll kind of help you out, but the first thing is going to be have you talk to your neighbors. No, because, and I understand that we do, but Rick and I don't like doing what we do, but we do it anyway. So thank you everybody for all of your assistance, and God bless you.
Help yourself to me.
Oh, cookies.